So let's just erase everything out of here. Okay, so erasing all of the automatic reps out of session that we had open before. Okay, so now if we go open, so one option is to double click. The other option is to open automatic, which we've already done. And then the other option is to open representation. Okay, so if we choose open representation, if you recall before when we had the model open, it had these additional simplified reps already set up. Okay, so we can choose from any of those. We can also still choose the automatic rep or the master rep, which is everything in there. But you know, maybe we're just working on the frame. Okay, so if we click open, all right, just directly on that, what that does is it just brings in that subset. So even though the entire assembly is there, available to be imported, we still have the top level assembly open. All we're working on right now is this part of it. So from a logical point of view, why would we need everything else open in session? We're just opening it just because. Do we really need to see it or not? So this allows us to then, you know, come and perform some sort of task on this model. You know, we might want to change something. Okay, I'm not going to actually change anything, but we could change something on the geometry, some assembly constraint, and so on and so forth, without needing all the excess models in the background, even though we're still working on the assembly. Okay, we could also here, just to clarify, we could also here just be working on one of this particular sub-assembly in its own window, and that would also help to reduce the resources required. Okay, but I guess when we have parts that are distributed amongst different sub-assemblies within a main level assembly, this is probably the only way we can work with it. Okay, so what I want to show now is if I go open and then look, and so this is, I'll just show you here, these are all the files that are consisting of within this assembly. You can see there's pages and pages of them, right? But if I look in session right now, if you're familiar with this, Creo is a memory-based system. It'll only open up the files that it's actually required to open. You can see in this case, it's actually just opened these files, okay? Not pages and pages, just basically 2 columns. If I go back to my working directory, you can see how much additional files are there. So hopefully that gives you some sort of understanding as to why it opens much faster. Okay. Now, if we were, so that's that assembly, but if we were wanting to bring in something else, like for example, there's a part here that we want to see, we can just say set representation to master, okay? And then immediately that part is now there for us. So it loads that from us. And if that part was on our file system, it happens really quickly. If it's through a network or through Windchill, maybe it's a bit slower. It depends on whether that file is already in your workspace. But you can see that file is there and able to be added at any point in time. Okay, so if I was to, let's say, you know, let's say edit definition of this whole assembly, you can see what it does is it actually then brings, as I do that, it says, oh, the file wasn't in session, but in order to do the operation I need to do, I need to bring that in. So you can see it actually brings in graphically those additional components that's required for that. And even if I don't make any changes, that's fine. So what can happen there is potentially multiple different things. And it depends on those previous settings that I've determined. But if I go and look and open now in session, you see before I had basically just 2 columns. Right now I've got 2 and a bit. because of those extra changes I made. Now, if I'm continuing to work on this model, different bits and pieces all over the shop, at this point I can go File, Manage Session, and go erase unused model reps if that's depending on my setting, or I can go File, Manage Session, Erase Not Displayed, and you can see it's going to actually remove those components out of my session that I had a moment ago. So I'm able to sort of really control what I have open. And if I show you again in session now, the 2 columns is basically just gone back to 2 columns plus, I guess, really one part, which is the part that I've added in here. So, you know, this part here, I could, after I finish working on it, I can say representation exclude, and maybe this one here, representation exclude, right? And then I could go File, Manage Session, Erase Not Displayed. There's those 2 parts, they're erased. All right, so it allows me to, like I said, there's other settings which you might need to explore if this is relevant to you, but that's really the whole point of using simplified reps from a like a resource type perspective. Okay, and obviously I'm using a relatively small assembly here now for this example so that we can see the behavior, but in your real situation, you know, you might have much larger assemblies and that might become more of an impact to you. Okay, but while I've got this assembly open as well, if I like to, I can come and choose a different rep. So I can say, okay, I'll want to look at now just the engine. Okay. So that warning there was because I made some changes before and whatever. But you see how it's now taking its time, and what it had to do is to load all those files in session. Okay. So if I'm just keeping coming back to this, but I think it's really useful to understand that now in session, we've got all these bits because I brought that part in. Okay, so we've got a whole bunch of stuff in the engine. And if I'm to swap back to the frame, that's cool. That happens really quickly, but what I've left behind is all those engine bits. Okay, so if I go File, I go File, Manage Session, Erase Not Displayed, you can see it's going to remove all those components that are just brought in. That's all I think I really want to show there, how that works and how you can sort of manage your memory and things like that.